Welcome to the ProLife Team Podcast. I'm Jacob Barr. I'm here with Jennifer and Shailene, missionaries with LoveLife, working to serve women who are seeking abortions by bringing the church to the sidewalks of abortion clinics and promoting a culture of life to change the tide of abortion and bring healing to our country. So Jennifer and Shailene, I'm excited to have you on the podcast today. Jennifer, would you introduce yourself as if you were talking to a small group of pregnancy clinic leadership teams and general pro-lifers, and maybe even people who don't agree with the pro-life stance?
Well, sure. Thank you so much for having us, Jacob. My name's Jennifer Geralds, and I am a missionary with a life-affirming ministry called LoveLife that is based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. And my ministry partner, Shaylene Burledge, is also on here with me. If you'd like to introduce yourself, Shaylene.
My name is Shaylene Burledge, and yes, Jennifer and I started LoveLife together back in 2020. We went to boot camp, and we were the first people to go through boot camp and learn how to be a life-affirming ministry while engaging the church.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to engaging the church and in this life affirming ministry, what have been what's one of the hurdles that you have come across and were able to work your way past?
Well, before we had encountered LoveLife, we already had a vision for wanting to connect the church with abortion vulnerable families. And we had a fantastic training curriculum that we were trying to introduce to churches. It was produced by CareNet, and we wanted to get that into churches. But our obstacle was that we couldn't get the pastor's attention. We couldn't get the church's attention to let them know that this was a need and that it was available. So when we found out about LoveLife, we discovered that they had the same mission, the same passion, but they had a model that they had already put into use and had found it to be very effective with churches of all different denominations in the evangelical realm. So we were very excited about that. And so that's why we went to training with them up in North Carolina. And I'll let Shaylene explain the method or the model if you'd like for us to do that.
Sure. Yeah, please.
So the LoveLife model it's based off of Nehemiah 1-3. It's a 4-step process called Hear, Pray, Go, Connect. And we have a 40-week campaign that begins in February and ends in November. And we ask pastors to adopt 1 week out of the 40 weeks. And their week begins on Sunday and ends with the prayer walk on Saturday. And the Hear, Pray, Go, Connect is Nehemiah heard about the wall. And so the broken down wall in his city, that's the first thing that happened. And so for us, we ask the pastors to educate their members on what God's word says about life and how valuable life in the womb is, and that we need to protect that. And then he talks about the tragic truth of abortion, and he also addresses women in the congregation and men who are suffering the trauma of a past abortion, and that there's healing in that. Jesus died for us all. So the congregation hears about our broken down wall in our cities, we believe, is the abortion clinics. And then to pray, the pastor asked the members to fast and pray with him, which was what Nehemiah did. He then fasted and prayed. And then the pastor invites the members of the church to go to the prayer walk on Saturday. And when our prayer walks are held out in front of the abortion clinics, where all we're doing is praying and worshiping. We don't carry signs. We're not political, and we're not engaging with anybody going in and out of the abortion clinics. We're simply there to worship and pray, and it's guided, and which is what Nehemiah did. He went to the wall. And then the fourth step is to connect. We don't want people to just leave with information. Nehemiah connected the 12 tribes, and they stood alongside each other and repaired the wall. And that's what we're asking people in the congregation to do. What would God have you do? We ask them. And so we do training. LoveLife does training, mostly Zoom and online, in the area of mentoring and discipleship. So if someone wants to mentor men and women who are facing unplanned pregnancy, we take them through that training. Foster care and adoption interest, we also take them through that training and connect them with the agencies that lead that. And then we also have abortion recovery groups and prayer teams. And so, there's something. Everybody can do something, but not everybody has to do everything. So that's what
good.
our campaign is.
So Jennifer, going back to the first part that that Shaylene mentioned, which was the hearing about the broken wall and how valuable life is in the womb. How would in your words, how would you describe the value of life? Whether it comes from a biblical viewpoint or a moral viewpoint or some other viewpoint, how would you describe how would you describe the value of life and why it's worth protecting?
Well, I believe in what the Bible says. I mean, that's what is driving all of what we do. But God has chosen people of all of his creation to bear his image. We are all image bearers, even if we don't personally know the Lord. And so just that distinction makes us unique and special, apart from anything else. And so that's why it's so important that even in the womb, even when a person is so small, you can barely see, that tiny embryo still bears the stamp of its creator. And so we believe that life begins at conception, and we want to serve families from what we call from the womb to the tomb. Like there's no part of life that isn't valuable because of what God has said we are and who he has created us to be in relationship with him. So that's the value that's behind it. When we fail to see the value of people just because they can't be seen, or they're in the womb, or they're in some other type of voiceless type situation, it's all the more important to speak up for them. I mean, that's what it says in Proverbs 31. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Ensure justice for those who are being crushed. And, if we are believers and we believe that people are intrinsically valuable and we know that they're being crushed and we're not saying anything about it, we're culpable in that. So for me, it's both an honor and a privilege to be able to be in this ministry, serving us in this capacity. I grew up in the church, so like that's not new to me. And so reaching out to pastors, explaining to them that, hey, this is an area that really is not addressed much from the pulpit. And a lot of that, and you had asked about obstacles. One of the obstacles that pastors have is they hear the word abortion and they just automatically start thinking crazy people who are trying to, stand on the sidelines and say all kinds of offensive things that they don't want their congregation to hear. Or they may think, oh, that's a political topic and I'm staying so far away from politics, I don't want to touch it. But they are completely missing the opportunity to create in their members an awareness of God's value of life and the need for discipleship. These moms and dads that are showing up at abortion clinics aren't horrible people that are making these decisions just out of the blue. They're desperate. They have stories, they have situations, and they need people to come alongside them and disciple them and provide support and help so that they actually could make a better choice with their lives, not only in this situation, but going forward as well. So we see this as a discipleship issue and an evangelism issue, not a political one.
Wow. Yeah, I would agree completely. That's really well said. Really well said. Shailene, what would you? Is there anything that you would add, or what were you thinking when you heard Jennifer speaking right then?
Well, I believe valuing life in the womb to the tomb is so important, but it begins with valuing life in the womb. And I think what we are seeing in our culture is that by not valuing life in the womb, life is not valued to the tomb. We're
Yeah.
seeing that. We're seeing so much death and murder and crime and things like that. And I believe it starts with valuing life. And if we don't value life in the womb, how can we value life outside of the womb or expect a culture to value life outside of the womb? I absolutely believe that life begins even, at conception, before conception. God knew us. He knew us. And so those are the things that I'm thinking.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like, and this is probably true in Christian life and for pastors in general, but in the pro-life world, I feel like the Goliaths are often false beliefs. Like there's these lies that need to be disarmed, and like we're constantly coming up against false beliefs, like a false belief that the pro-life people on the sidewalk are violent and they're murdering and blowing up abortion clinics, and that hasn't been the case for, I don't think, since I've been, I don't know, like I'm 44 years old. And I think a lot of that took place before I was, I don't even know what, a long time
Aware of
ago.
it. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And like that's still like a false belief of like, the people on the sidewalk are dangerous, and that's, it couldn't be further from the truth. They're praying, they're they're hope, they're caring, they're there, trying to serve someone who has a very different belief, and trying to help rescue people that are headed towards a dangerous decision. Um,
And Jacob, the way that we do that, I mean, even these people don't even really have a belief. As a woman who chose abortion, I have abortion in my past. It wasn't that I believed in abortion. It was
mhm.
that I was desperate. I thought that the pregnancy was the problem and abortion was the solution. And so there's a belief, I guess, right there that's untrue. So I guess in a sense it is a belief.
Yeah. When I was thinking of the abortion worker, when I said that, like, the abortion workers have a belief system that they're helping women in these situations. And I think the women
Right.
coming in very often feel like they have no choice. Like this is the only choice because they're not ready for pregnancy or parenting. They're not ready for, like, they have these beliefs that they're not ready, and that they can't do this and that they have planned for their life. And so, like, I feel, yeah, they don't, I feel like they don't think they have a choice. And and what's interesting is that like 80% or 75% of women who are looking to get an abortion, when they see an ultrasound and they have a caring counselor listen and essentially speak life into them,
Mhm.
75% will change directions from seeking an abortion to choosing parenting or adoption. And I think what that says is that people are in need of real relationship, and it also says that they're also in need of actual like medical information of like what's truly happening inside their body, and the ultrasound provides a window. And so it's really sort of, and 25 or 20% still choose abortion, and that group, that relationship and medical information wasn't the answer for them. But 75-80% are truly, yeah, missing on relationship and missing on medical information. And I think that's a series of false beliefs that set up someone to choose something that if they only knew more, they would choose better.
If they knew the resources that were available, 75, and I'll be quick, but 75 to 80% of women choosing and men choosing abortion, have no support system. And I'm not talking about
Yeah.
just financial support, but they feel like they have no support. So by just offering that support and that friendship changes things.
One story that we love to tell that happened in Charlotte not that long ago, a abortion director for the largest abortion clinic there in Charlotte had her own niece come into the office because she was pregnant and was considering abortion. And all of the LoveLife, counselors are standing outside beckoning her to reconsider. And she decided that she did want to reconsider. She wanted to just talk with those counselors that were out there first. And so she left and spoke with them and decided to choose life for her baby. She saw her baby on the ultrasound, and it was something that she wanted to do. So she was quickly adopted by one of our partnering churches. We have over 550 partnering churches with us. And so they found one near her, and they began discipling her, and then through the course of time held a baby shower for her. Well, the church members did not know, but she invited the abortion center director to come to the shower. So that director ends up in the church watching all of these church members love on her niece and minister to her and supply her needs. And she was blown away by what she saw. It totally changed her perspective of what those counselors were trying to accomplish. So she ended up going back to the abortion clinic, still was working there, but then she began, if any girl came to her who was undecided, she began telling them, hey, you need to go talk to those counselors out there. They're not crazy people. They actually help. You should talk to them. So she began referring the undecided women out the door. And then, like Shaylene mentioned, we run a 40-week prayer campaign. Well, on week 40, we invite every church that has participated with us during the year to come out for one giant celebration of life. And so we had our week 40, and she saw all the churches gathered around praising and praying. And so she just walked out of the abortion clinic that day, never to return. She was just done with that industry. And she ended up starting her own catering business. And now she caters food for LoveLife. So, we've just seen all kinds of miraculous things happen when the church shows up to pray, which really is fundamental. It's the fasting and prayer part that makes a huge difference, but then it's getting outside of the four walls and being present at the place where it's darkest in our cities. Now, for Shaylene and I, our abortion clinics have closed, but that has not stopped the need for churches to show up. We just have to show up in different ways. We have to show up in our own churches where we are outspokenly supportive of families who are struggling in that way, creating safe spaces for them to come so that they know where they can go for help instead of, instead of driving across state lines to get an abortion. That they can turn to their local church and know that they're going to be supported and find help and not condemnation. So,
Wow, thank you for sharing that story. That's so, yeah, it's so cool to see God's fingerprints, when it comes to people making life-changing decisions and seeing, the power of people in prayer who are standing there for Jesus, yeah, impacting someone in a positive way. That's so good to hear and share. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Um, and then one of the other things that you had mentioned was the need for discipleship, or how these women are, yeah, they essentially need community. And I think that's where that church connection is strongly needed. Um, so Shailene, how would you describe, how churches can minister, or how they connect to these women who are in um a desperate, or difficult time?
So who we're ministering to are men and women facing unplanned pregnancy. That's where we, are leading the discipleship and the help toward men and women facing unplanned pregnancy. And the way we do that is after the prayer walk, we then meet with the pastors and invite them to become a house of refuge church. And what they're stating is they agree to join us, and we ask them to read a statement twice a year that simply says, it makes it very clear to them, their members, what a house of refuge is. And that is that there is a safe place for men and women facing unplanned pregnancy to run to the church instead of running across the state line now to have abortions or even take the abortion pill. We can talk about that in a moment if you like, but to even have that sent to them and have an abortion that way. That the church is there. The pastor says, what we will not do is we will not gossip, we will not talk, we will not, guide you to an abortion clinic. What we will do is that we will come alongside you and help you and overcome any obstacle that you're facing that would not allow you to have this child. We'll overcome these obstacles with you, and you're welcome here. We want to love you. We want to get you grafted into the church and befriend you and equip you to parent this child, or to help you along the journey of the adoption option. And then the pastor also in the letter reads, to speaks to the moms and dads that have suffered the trauma of abortion. If you've suffered the trauma of abortion, there is healing, there is abortion recovery that we can get you connected with. Because I believe that the silence from the pulpit is, we're seeing women, we have met women on Monday who went to church on Sunday. We meet them Monday at the abortion clinic with the scheduled abortion of their child to take the life of their unborn baby, but they just left the church pew the day before. And so 54% of women having abortions identify as a Christian, and 2 out of 5 of those women go to church every Sunday. So those statistics, 1 in 4 women and men having abortions, are the same inside the church as outside the church. So we first want to create a house of refuge by the pastors making it clear what their church stands for. And then we ask them to, identify a point person, not a staff member, not the pastor. The pastor has enough to do to identify a staff person that LoveLife works with to identify the people in the church who want to go further and be trained in these areas.
And LoveLife, one of the great things about it is they provide the training. So when somebody decides they want to learn more about foster care or adoption, or they want to, find out what it means to be a mentor to a family in need, they can go through training that LoveLife provides for them. So the church is not having to invent that wheel. And then I personally also love to connect them with CareNet's training curriculum, the stuff that we began with from the very beginning, making life disciples.
Yeah.
I mean, the name of that curriculum kind of spells it out. We want church members to be equipped to be able to not only walk these families through the childbearing years, but for the rest of their life. It's a full-time commitment in that regard.
Yeah. So Shailene, what is the silence from the pulpit communicate? Like, what is that when a pastor doesn't speak on abortion? What do you think that is saying?
It's the unforgivable sin. Jesus did not die for women like me. We sit there in shame. It's not something that we talk about. I went through abortion recovery in February of 2016. And up to that point, I had several abortions. And up to that point, my abortions I was not discussing them. However, in 2006, when I was homeless, addicted to the drugs, the Lord pulled me out of that. And the first thing that I asked for when I accepted Jesus Christ in my heart in my 30s is I said, Lord, forgive me of my sin. I'm the worst sinner of all. I took the lives of my children. And he audibly said to me, daughter, my son, Jesus Christ died for you. So I was forgiven. See, I checked that secret right back in, but I wasn't healed. And so the silence from the pulpit, we have men and women who have asked forgiveness and received forgiveness of Jesus Christ for their abortions. But because the pastors aren't addressing it and even offering abortion recovery and the healing of Jesus Christ, there's the difference. I was forgiven in 2006, but I wasn't healed until 2016, and that changed everything for me. Now I'm able to talk about it, and I don't fear man, because now I am not only forgiven by Jesus Christ, but now I'm healed, and I don't want anybody else to go through what I went through. So I think the silence is deafening to men and women. And when you're talking about 25%, 1 in 4 women, also 1 in 4 men have had an abortion in their lifetime, and 30% of those men and women go on to have more than one. So we're silently sitting in church pews hurting.
It- So on this podcast, I often refer to this one verse. So people that listen to it will probably be like, "Oh, he's going to James 5:16 again." But I'm going to do it because it's such a powerful verse for for finding healing. And so James 5:16, it reads, "Therefore confess your sins to each other and pray for each other, so that you may be healed. And the prayers of a righteous person availeth much." And so like being able to like tell someone else who is so I think what this verse is speaking to is having like a church family that you can speak authentically what's going on, and without having them cut you, or cut you with words, or crush you, or having it be a safe place to share and be held in a comforting way when you're trying to you know essentially confess sin. And so I think, confessing sin one to another, and then having that person then, respond to pray, essentially then it says so that you may be healed. And so I think that's just I think that just speaks to a healthy church body being able to share something, a sinful something, and then also then the response is prayer. And what are your thoughts on James 5:16? Telling someone else, speaking those words into existence by saying them out loud, and having someone in your church community then respond with prayer as a way to find healing.
Me, I love that passage, and I think that it defines, like, I've seen I've seen the pendulum swing both ways. I've seen where everybody was so prudish that you couldn't admit anything, and people were too, that it was just very religious and churchy. And so nothing authentic was happening. But then I've seen the pendulum swing to the other side, where, it was almost a fad to say everything that was going on in your life, but with no healing. There was no
Mm,
circling back to Jesus doesn't intend for us to live either extreme. He wants us to be healed and walking with him, abiding with him. And that happens through confessing our sins with one another and then turning to Jesus together for that solution, which that verse kind of encapsulates the whole thing. Um, yeah, I
yeah.
love that verse.
What are your thoughts, Shailene?
Well, I think having the opportunity, having someone open that door of, I love pastors that are transparent. I love pastors that get up in the pulpit and talk about their sin and their healing. I do believe that confession with healing does go hand in hand, or it should go hand in hand. Like Jennifer said, you can have just confessing everything and never changing,
Yeah.
just keep on going, walking along, or you're not allowed to really say your truth. And so I think that's a great scripture, because it does, I mean, we have to confess it to get it out. We have to tell someone, and then the healing process is what opened the door for me to be able to, now I can tell the world. I could tell the world, you don't want to do this. I know firsthand what this is, and this is not what you want to do. And we can help you. That's really what we're offering, out there on the sidewalk, where we offer the love and hope of Jesus Christ and the help of the local church. We have just, LoveLife has found a way to reach the pastor to really change the mindset that this is not political. This is absolutely necessary to lead, the members of the church, to lead the congregation, that they're the shepherd to shepherd them into with love, truth and love. And so I just think that if they're talking about it, we have 23 churches that have partnered with us. We have 12 churches here in Alabama that have become a house of refuge. 23 churches that have done prayer walks, and it's a process. I mean, we've been at it for
We're in our second year. Yeah.
Right. We've been at it for 2 years, so it's a process, but it really is getting in with those pastors and just saying, hey, let's talk about this. Let's talk about what's really happening and how you can really help your congregation going forward in this, because this is what's happening in the world. I mean, abortion is the number one cause of death, number one by far.
And I think for for pastors who may be listening to this podcast, I think it would be, it's just like the journey towards creating a confessional community where people can, share, and then the response is to pray and bring it to Jesus. And so when someone shares, there's prayer, and then there's probably also follow up for, like, how are you doing on this, whatever that happened to be. And I think that's all part of that experience of confessing and healing is, I think that prayer is weaved in, and also the follow up is weaved in as well. And that, I think that all works together.
I think that's all part of the whole discipleship piece that I think by and large the church has kind of gotten away from. The Big C church, there have been a lot of programs, a lot of initiatives, a lot of mission trips, even, all valuable things. But like Shaylene's healing happened in the context of a group of just a handful, small group of women. She probably couldn't have worked through that in a large Sunday school class. But in the intimacy of a discipleship type group, that kind of thing happens, which is why we would love to see the whole church get involved in this, because it takes life on life impact for change to happen. It can't just be a program or, send somebody to do something. We need real believers connecting with people who are hurting so that they can not be alone in the struggle.
Another thing is that we have story after story, Jacob, but when a pastor reads that statement, the House of Refuge statement from the pulpit, we have a church here in Birmingham, Guiding Light Church, one of our very first House of Refuge churches last year. It was our second one. And they read the statement, and there wasn't anybody trained. They jumped on board. Yes, we want to be a House of Refuge. We're going to read this to our church. They read it, and a lady came down the aisle to the pastor's sister and said, well, okay, I'm pregnant and I don't want this baby. Now what? And all she knew, what she did know, is she said, listen, don't go to the abortion clinic. We will help you. We will help you, whatever that looks like. We're going to help you. And that young lady ended up, giving birth and choosing the adoption option, and the church went alongside her. But she was going to have it, her mind was set. She was going to have an abortion. And we have stories like that all over the country, because there's 125 churches around the country, from California, New York, Florida, Alabama, and in between 14 cities, where there's 125 churches that are a House of Refuge. And we have a map of the House of Refuge churches that are trained and ready for men and women facing unplanned pregnancy, that they're welcome at that church on our website.
And we have spent the past several weeks connecting with pregnancy centers, letting them know about our local houses of refuge, because we have point people with each of those houses of refuge, and we can give that contact information to the pregnancy center so that when they have a client who would like to be discipled or who would like to get into a church, they don't just have to walk into a building and not know somebody. Our point person can contact that client and start up a relationship. They can go get coffee, they can have breakfast or something, and just start the relationship and eventually get them grafted into a small group and then to the church itself. It's just that it's up until this point, the pregnancy centers have been faced with, okay, so they have a client who'd like to go to church. They just hand them a list of, well, here's some good churches in our area. I hope you check them out and like them. There's no personal connection there, and they don't ever follow through with that. But when it's initiated by a real person who cares and who understands the situation that this young lady's in, it can make all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
So if you could, so how would you suggest that a pregnancy clinic improve that? Maybe by bringing in, like, what would be the steps for a pregnancy clinic team to improve the connection to a local church?
Well, that's been the problem. They haven't been able to do that. Their work is the triage. They are the triage, and they're ministering to the men and women coming into the clinic, facing a crisis pregnancy, needing help right now and so they offer parenting classes, and then you earn mommy money. They offer Bible studies, you earn daddy dollars, and you get to spend that, and provide for your child. But they're only geared for the first year or two. They're not geared for long term, and they really don't have the manpower to engage the church. I believe that, LoveLife is the missing link for the pregnancy centers. We have very good relationships with our pregnancy centers here. We have 9 of them in Birmingham and Tuscaloosa. That's where we minister to. It's about an hour difference from each other. And so we have a very good relationship with our pregnancy centers to offer them this help. They're not geared to really engage the church. That's a big process. Like I said, we've been doing it for 2 years, and we have, 12 churches that have actually jumped on board.
So how does a pregnancy clinic work with LoveLife? Like, what does that look like?
Well, we have, like I said, we work to keep up the relationship there so that we know who they are and they know who we are. And we provide them with the contact information with our House of Refuge churches. And so if they have a need, they can contact the point person at one of those House of Refuge churches. The primary function is for them to be able to get their client into a gospel-centered, grace-based church, and to feel confident that when they give that person over to that church is going to use the same language of love and compassion and gospel-centered focus that they're using in the pregnancy center. We've talked to several pregnancy center directors who've told us that in the past, they've actually been too afraid to refer somebody over to a church because they didn't know what kind of reception they were going to receive there. And they didn't want all of their hard work to be undone. And that should never be the case. But we want the pregnancy centers to be confident that the churches they're sending their clients to are prepared and ready to use the same kind of love and communication that's being done with them at the pregnancy center. Continuity of care is kind of how we look at it.
Right. So one way that we can do that, Jacob, for example, Jennifer and I are missionaries. Our region is Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. We have been focused on Birmingham and Tuscaloosa. Birmingham is where we live. Tuscaloosa is 45 minutes away. And so there's an abortion clinic in each city. So we've kind of been focused in and around those 2 areas, mobilizing the church. But Mississippi is, Mississippi, we need House of Refuge churches all over. So if there's not a LoveLife in that city, then there are, all of the states has a LoveLife missionary for that city. So our region is Mississippi. We're focused in Alabama. And so we have a contact in Mississippi who knows a lot of pastors. So we're soon to have a Zoom with this person and their board members to to tell them about House of Refuge. So we want to build House of Refuges in every city, outside of our immediate reach. So we don't have the prayer walk. There's not an abortion clinic, and we're not there to guide the prayer walk, but we can still do the House of Refuge. So if there's a pregnancy center that wants to find out more about LoveLife and the closest LoveLife missionary or city director to them, then they can go to lovelife.org and look at the map and contact the closest LoveLife representative. And then we can do this. We can Zoom and offer House of Refuge churches. So we can still partner with pregnancy centers outside of our physical reach.
Awesome. Well, I've really enjoyed, talking and hearing more about, your connection with churches and how that connects with helping women in dark situations and just helping them, bring them into to better places and better relationships. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up the podcast?
Everyone can do
gospel.
something.
Yep, everyone can do something, and this is the gospel is first for us. We have mentioned Jesus and the love and hope of Jesus, but this is all about the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. I shall not be in want. He makes me lie down in green. He leads me by quiet blue. Yeah, though I walk through darkest valleys, you are near me. Your protection and guidance are comforting me everywhere that I go. Spread a feast before me in the presence of my enemies. In front of my accusers, you're enjoying me. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup is overflowing. Mercy, beauty, and your love are chasing after me. Everywhere that I go, every day of my life, everywhere I go, every day of my life. You refresh and restore